What's up, everybody? On today's show, we're talking all the latest storylines across the SEC post-spring ball with our buddy Chris Marler, who is set up best to make a run for a championship in 2024 in the SEC. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. On today's show, we're hitting on all the big topics across the SEC. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to Everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And a quick reminder, this episode brought to you by Monopoly Go. We are going to talk more about Monopoly Go, the fast-paced game that lets you team up with your friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. Download Monopoly Go now for free on Google Play and the App Store. Game on. Chris Marler joins us of the Fourth Down and Wrong. Is that right? Is that the podcast name? Fourth Down and Wrong?
No, you know that. Fourth and Wrong, idiot.
Fourth and Wrong.
Fourth and Wrong podcast.
No, I'm an idiot.
You were just watching the show before we recorded this one.
I know. I got to admit, I'm full Ron Burgundy. When I type something, I read it, and I know it's wrong, and I'm like, my brain can't compute because my brain is telling me read what's on the screen, and I'm like, that is not right. So anyway, Fourth and Wrong. The Fourth and Wrong podcast does a great job there. Marler, I want to start here, man, because there's a lot of big picture SEC stuff we got to talk about as we now turn the page. We're into May, and man, this is we're full on into summer mode here. We got SEC Media Days coming up. We'll be in new summer balls, and then into fall practice, and then we are full on into the 2024 college football season. So let's start here, because all I heard throughout January and February is, oh man, I know we just had the December winter portal, but man, that spring portal is going to be crazy. There's going to be some of the biggest names. You're not going to believe some of the names that are entering the portal. And I'm like texting people. I'm like, is Jalen Milroe moving? Like, what's happening here? And lo and behold, no real surprise headline names in the spring transfer portal. Were you surprised by that?
I was, and I'll say this: I was mainly surprised because I'm not saying anything negative about this dude. I love this dude to death. We talk a lot, but Josh Pate's the one that said it, so I just assumed it was real, right? We don't talk that much. I made him a graphic about his gas station choices the other day, but no, your cat, by the way, is in the background. So, no, I think that's kind of why I was surprised. I will say this too, because when this happened in January, as you can see the logo on the hat, I thought that it was a little bit awkward timing, because one of the things I heard from when Saban retired is the portal opens for 30 days after this coach is gone. So you're allowed to, for 30 days, go after this team's roster, but they can't do the same. And so, and everyone kept saying it's like, just wait until April, because then Bama's going to go pick everybody off from all these other schools, blah, blah. But you can't go from conference to conference in the SEC. So that alone made me think that I understand players are going to want to come into the conference, but I didn't think there was going to be a ton of people that were going to be leaving unless they outwardly lost their starting job in the spring. And as you know, more than anyone that's covered the college football, that just doesn't happen that much, where it's like somebody is going to in spring, unless it's a quarterback or somebody that really needs a confidence boost. You're not going to have a coach come out and say competition's closed on this position. This guy's got it. Everyone else is a backup. It's just not going to happen. So I was surprised there wasn't more movement, but I think that's one thing I think that coaches, if there's any control they can have over how tumultuous their jobs now are and the calendar is for college football, having some sort of control over all right, if I can leave spring with some idea of what my roster is going to be for the fall, that's ideal. And it makes the most sense. I feel like that it didn't blow up like we all thought.
Yeah, and just to give you some of the more notable names, and one of them just came out the other day, Alabama safety Tony Mitchell. Not shocking, but he was a guy that I thought was going to contribute there. When you lose a Caleb Downs, it was a depth piece. But I know he had missed most of the spring with it was a hamstring injury or whatever. So not shocking. Auburn loses two wide receivers, and Jay Fair Coy Moore goes in the other day, but they also add, Penn State's leading receiver from last year and Keandre Lambert-Smith. You combine that with Cam Coleman. I mean, that's an upgrade at wide receiver, in my opinion. A&M, they lose center Bryce Foster, but I heard people at A&M saying, that was kind of expected. He was doing the Olympic or doing the track thing or whatever. And then they lose safety Jacoby Matthews. And I heard David Nuno say not a big surprise. So it was just funny. Like all these guys kept leaving and it was like, no big surprise, no big surprise. Just a few more. Arkansas, they lose their backup running back with Dominique Johnson. I think that was a little bit of a hit because that's a guy who played a lot of football last for Arkansas. And then Ole Miss, just like this is more depth, but they lose Zachary Franklin, who was transfer for wide receiver from UTSA. He was probably going to be third, fourth string anyway. But they lose Kedrick Rossano, is how I'm told it said. But he was like their freshman running back from a year ago. He leaves, that's fine because they've got a bunch of pieces, Ulysses Bentley and all this. But all of Ole Miss's running backs now are like juniors and seniors. So they don't have like a young piece in there. Now they're going for one of the top running backs in next year's recruiting class. But I just think that's interesting considering Quinshon Judkins, who just left, was a guy who was a stud for them as a freshman and a sophomore. And now they're going to lean on a bunch of older guys. So again, not like huge headline, mountain moving names, but some pieces that could have contributed this year.
Yeah. I'll reference like two of them that off the top of my head from what you said. Tony Mitchell, I think that this was a concern once it was already happening in January, but the depth that Bama has at receiver or at defensive back is very concerning. Like the amount of people they've lost to the draft and now the portal, it's a ton. So I think you're going to be very young there. And very green in a lot of places. You get Malachi Moore. You got a couple pieces that are going to come back. The kid from USC and all that, Damani Jackson. So you've got some talent there, but you're going to be very thin. The thing with Ole Miss, I feel like that Ole Miss is a little bit like the Miami of the SEC. And not just because they're flashy and they have I think a lot of, what's the best way to put this? Staying power for like the casual fan. I think when people look at Ole Miss, they see Kiffin and they like what he says with how funny he can be on social media, and they have the whole thing with like the jerseys and uniform combinations and all that kind of stuff. They're a very likable school. I think that they're all in on this season. I think just like Miami, they are all in on this season. They're trying to go out and get into the portal, get as much instant talent as they can right away, guys that are going to make an instant impact. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that necessarily. But it's also at a position too at running back where I think if you talk to people close to the situation at Ole Miss, it sucks to lose Quinshon Judkins. I think that locker room was okay with it, and I think that Lane was okay with it as well, as much as you could be with losing a talent like that.
Yeah, just to give you real quick, so Ulysses Bentley's back as a senior. They bring in Logan Diggs from LSU, but he's hurt. He's going to miss a good portion of the year, and then they bring in the kid from New Mexico, and then they bring back Henry Parrish from who was once at Ole Miss, went to Miami, now he's coming back. So I think they'll be okay there, but again, it's just it's going to probably be very much running back by committee there. Tennessee, they lost cornerback Christian Conyer, and it's not a big loss, but man, Tennessee's entire secondary is new. I mean, it's like all new names in there. They bring in Jamad McCoy from Oregon State, Jalen McMurray from Temple. I'm a little concerned about that. I mean, maybe it's a good thing because maybe Tennessee's defense wasn't all that great last year, but it just concerns me a little bit if I'm a Vol fan because I'm all excited about Nico and the offense, and they got some stud receivers, but the big questions on that defense, can they get stops? And what if they're getting busted coverages all day and giving up big plays? Obviously, James Pierce up front helps, but I don't know. That was just a concern for me when I was looking at Tennessee's secondary. I'm like, I don't know any of these guys. Who are these people?
Yeah. But again, I think that the calling card for Heupel is going to be that offense always. That's a team that if they can just, like you said, they can string together a couple of stops, and if they cannot give up 30, I think they're going to be in contention of every game because I think that they're going to be able to put up. Listen, like this isn't a trying to hate on Joe Milton, but dropping from Hendon Hooker to Joe Milton was one of the biggest fall offs at a position I think in all of college football, and it's not just the fact that like Joe Milton's talent, it's the fact that like the efficiency of which that offense was going on with Jalen Hyatt and with Hendon Hooker, we haven't seen anything like that. And I think that they didn't have as great of receivers as we were expecting last year as they did the year before. I think that changes this year, man. Like, they've got some kids they got from the portal. They got Mike Matthews from my alma mater at Parkview High School, from like a 5-star coming in. They've got a loaded position unit there and some pass catchers and some skill position players. I think that offense is going to be really, really good. It's just going to be, like I said, like, I'm not comparing the offenses. I don't think it'll be as efficient or as electric as LSU's was a year ago. But that was the problem with LSU, right? It's like, hey, we can score on everybody. Can we stop and keep these kids or these teams to less than 30? That'll be the question for Tennessee this year.
Yeah, it's it'll be interesting to see. Again, like you said, if they can get some stops on defense and improve, yeah, Tennessee can be their contention for competing in the SEC. One more on the transfer portal. I liked Missouri. They bring in a offensive tackle from SMU, Marcus Bryant. He was a starting center for them. And this on top of them bringing in Jaden Green from Oklahoma. Like, that O-line with Cameron Johnson back, like, that's a really good offensive line now. Now, I have some concerns about them replacing Cody Schrader, but Brady Cook back, obviously the receiving core with Luther Burden, Mookie Cooper, Theo Weiss, like, they may have one of the stronger offensive line units, and that's a little bit scary because, again, that's kind of been a strength for Mizzou the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a team, man. Like, we all know Luther Burden's name. Luther Burden, the drop-off that he had from the start of the year to the end because he was injured, right? Like half of his production, like his production was like cut in half from like the first 6 games to the last 6 games. People better hope that Mookie Cooper somehow doesn't figure it out, because Theo Weiss is already a bit of a problem, I think, for secondaries. And Mookie Cooper's a guy that we thought 2 years ago was going to be like maybe a guy that took the reins and was the main go-to guy. So I'm excited to see what this Mizzou team does. I wonder if they have turned a corner in the conference, and I think it'd be awesome if they did. You're talking about a program that had the 3rd most draft picks of any team in the SEC. They tied with LSU. They had 6 this weekend, the NFL draft, or last weekend with the NFL draft. I can't wait to see what else we have in store for us with that offense, because Eli Drinkwitz is a great offensive mind, right? It's great they have depth in the offensive line, which is the most important place you probably need it in the SEC. But with Drink, like last year going into the season, we all thought that Brady Cook was going to be just average at best, right? Brady Cook was a top 3 to 5 quarterback in the league last year. And I can't wait to see what he looks like with another year on top of Burden, and then also, like you said, like Theo Weiss.
Last thing on the portal, maybe the biggest name to move into the SEC via the portal is the guy who's not even going to play this year, and that's Jaden Rashada, coming over from Arizona State to go to Georgia to be the backup quarterback. I mean, if everything goes well, Carson Beck starts every game for Georgia, and he's awesome, and Jaden Rashada doesn't see the field. But it's kind of interesting because all I heard all spring was how great Gunnar Stockton had been. He took a leap forward. They bring in Ryan Puglisi after they missed out on Dylan Raiola. So it's like, okay,
this wasn't the number 1 quarterback in the entire country for 2026.
Yeah, it wasn't a need for Georgia, but then again, if he wanted to come, if I'm Kirby Smart, I'm going, well, I'm not going to tell him no. Yeah, come on over. Yeah. Let's see what you can do next year, Rashada.
What this tells me more than anything, and I'm not saying that Rashada couldn't start in the SEC. He already started at Arizona State. It's a perplexing move because I think that he would probably have played it. He would have played last year if he was healthy the whole time. Coming in when you're going to sit a year is whatever. I think from his standpoint it makes a lot of sense. Like, you come in, you have tons of talent around you. You have a lot of like pieces that are going to make you look better as a quarterback. You get to sit and learn the offense. You have to be rushed into something, being the starter from day one. It's obviously working for Carson Beck. Why not sit back and do the same thing for yourself? What it tells me from Kirby's standpoint is 2 things. One, he knows that you can never have enough depth at that position because it's the most important position in all sports. And 2, there is not a more petty coach in this country than Kirby Smart. When I say, like, listen, Kirby Smart is the best coach in college football, for one, but he's also he's like us when it comes to like hating Florida. Like, Georgia fans hate Florida. He's like us as like a fan. Like, nobody hates Florida like Kirby Smart hates Florida. And I think it's him being able to come in and kind of pile on when he has a chance. So of course he's going to take that chance.
I always say this though, like, he ought to be rooting for Billy Napier. Like, it's funny. I'll never forget when things are going sideways for Les Miles at LSU and Nick Saban came out. He's like, you guys better be proud of what Les Miles has done there. I'm like, of course, you whoop his ass every year. Of course you want him to stay. Like, it's just so funny when that happens. Like, the dangerous part for Kirby is, Florida decides to make a coaching change and they hire somebody good. Then it's like, now I got to worry about them. So I always think that's funny when coaches are like, hey, lay off this guy. He's doing a great job. All right, more to come with Chris Marler here on Locked On SEC. Which team impressed us most coming out of Spring Bowl in the SEC? We'll hit on that next. Well, first, I want to remind you guys this episode is presented to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience is the formula for a winning championship and is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle, level it up to peak performance, superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with that eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices that you want, it is easy to make your car the MVP and bring home a huge victory. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. It is ebaymotors.com. And jumping back into it with our buddy Chris Marler from the Fourth and Wrong podcast. I got it right that time. And Marler, as we dive back into it, I have to admit I'm a little bit of a sycophant. I watched every spring game that aired and took notes. And outside the Ole Miss one was kind of a joke. I mean, it was a hot dog eating contest and tug of war, and so it wasn't really a game. But I did take notes from a lot of the games, just kind of takeaways. And look, we're not going to learn anything real from a spring game, but I wanted to pose this question. Who maybe impressed you coming out of spring ball that maybe you had low expectations for? And I'll start here. I thought Arkansas, the Bobby Petrino thing, like he's the OC. He's a good play caller. I think this is a great hire. And our guy Taylen Green, we had him on the show a couple weeks ago here on Locked On SEC, the Boise State transfer. He looked awesome at quarterback. I mean, he was calm, poised, delivering bullets into the red zone, threw a couple touchdowns. He's got the running ability. And then Jaquindon Jackson, the transfer running back from Utah. Like, I think that's a great 1-2 punch. And dare I say, like, maybe better, like the hype and expectations we had for KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders a year ago, the Taylen Green, Jaquindon Jackson duo might be better this year with Petrino calling plays.
I mean, I don't know how it would be. I mean, like Petrino is one of the best offensive minds still in football. So yeah, I mean, like I don't disagree with you, and that's not even taking away anything from like the previous OC or anything like that. But it is still perplexing, as you saw last year with like what we all thought was going to happen with that 1-2 punch, and it just clearly did not work that way. I will tell you that like the one that I'm most intrigued on, and it's partially like I'm pretty sure this player is transferred there. You just mentioned Raheem or Rocket Sanders going to South Carolina. Like South Carolina, like both these teams, what they have in common is that the expectations are kind of low right now for Arkansas, right? They're very low for Arkansas. I think the same is probably considered for South Carolina. After you lose Spencer Rattler, you have a couple like you lose Xavier Legette and all these other guys, Juice Wells at the receiver position, Nick Harbor, Lenora Sellers, and Rocket Sanders. Like those are three guys that have potential star power. Like Sellers, like when has South Carolina been at their best? They've been at their best when they have a quarterback who is a good to very good college quarterback, not a world beater that is going to like be a first round draft pick from the SEC or sorry, in the NFL draft, but like a good college quarterback. And I think that Lenora Sellers has that ability and what he can do with his legs and how big and physical he can be. I'm excited to see what this team does this year. Hopefully, like the offensive line has been a problem for several years now. Hopefully that gets shored up. The defensive line it's got a lot of ways to go. They struggled a lot last year, especially against the run at times. I do think it's a team that can be a lot better than they were a year ago. Now, does that mean they compete with Georgia and Clemson? I don't know. But I do think that it's a team that can be a lot better than we saw versus the expectations we had for them a year ago and then this year.
Yeah, and I think you hit on. And by the way, shout out to the Horace Grant rec specs that Lenore's Sellers Sports. That's awesome. But you hit on it. I mean, it's the trenches. I don't know if they got better on the offensive line. You know, and I think that was a big thing hampering Spencer Rattler last year. Spencer Rattler was awesome when he had time.
Yeah.
The problem is he rarely had time. And so, you know, I think, you know, at least Sellers has the running capability, but man, he's going to be running for his life back there. And then on the defensive line, you know, I don't know if they got a ton better there. We're going to see, but that's my concern for South Carolina is in the trenches getting beat up.
Well, and I tell you this, you and I have talked about this before. I've said it ad nauseum on our podcast. One of my favorite stories about coaches, okay? Saban brings in Kiffin after the kick six, before they played Oklahoma in the Sugar Bowl, and he brings him in as like a analyst before he becomes the OC, and it's like, hey, what should we do? What are we doing wrong with this offense? We have all this talent. Why aren't they able to convert, blah, blah, blah. And he goes up to a whiteboard, and he draws 5 numbers. He goes, these are your best players, and it was like DeAndre White, TJ Yeldon, Derrick Henry, Amari Cooper, and someone else. He's like, these are your best players, give them the ball. It's that simple. Like, Nick Harbor is the only 5-star receiver you had on that roster last year. I understand how great Xavier Legette became, and I know how good Juice Wells was. But, like, get the ball to this 6'5", 230-pound freak who's currently trying to compete to go to the Olympics. Like, get the ball in his hands and then see what he can do. Like, he's a mismatch in some level, right? Especially when you have the other talent around him. Get the ball in your playmaker's hands, and that's it.
One more here on who impressed me in spring ball, and this one is just like they're the ultimate wild card to me. Mississippi State is the island of misfit toy. Like, I like Jeff Lebby as a play caller is awesome, and I think it's a great hire for Mississippi State. I understand expectations are very low, but after the first couple plays of that spring game, Blake Shapen got in a rhythm. He started finding his receivers, and every receiver there is like somebody new that they've brought in from outside, whether it's a Louisville receiver, a UTEP receiver, but like their whole offensive line they built through the portal. So, I mean, like, if you're a Mississippi State fan, you're going to have to buy a program on game one because you're going to have to figure out who all these guys are. But like, dude, expectations for them, like Vegas has got them at like 4 wins. They have no hope like for most people. So if I'm Jeff Lebby, I'll let it all hang out, dude. Like, we got nothing to lose. Nobody's expecting anything from us. And I think they are going to upset somebody they're not supposed to beat this year because they're going to take them lightly.
Was just going to say that. I think that they have that little bit of Arkansas and Pittman situation where it's like they had in 2021. It's like they're going to jump up and get somebody. Like, they're going to jump, because here's the thing, and I think that schools like that, schools like Vandy, I hate to throw them in that situation or in that same vein, but like, those are the 2 worst teams in the conference right now. And Mississippi State also, to be very fair, had to go through something that no other team has had to go through in a very long time. And their coach tragically passed away, like, between the end of the regular season and the bowl game, right? Like, and now you have Texas and Oklahoma coming into this already very, very stout league. Like, it's not a bad thing to have some sort of gimmicky type offense like Mike Leach had, or like the triple option or something in one of those places, because on a short week or on like a week coming off, like, you know, in the SEC, like, where you have these like not sandwiches. That's what I'm looking for here. Like trap games, all that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, like it's not. I tell you what, if you come off like a lot of teams in the SEC are going to have this, where they're playing like at OU or at Texas, then you got to go to Jordan-Hare, then you got a home game against LSU, and then you got to go to Starkville with all those effing cowbells, and then like, you know, this offense that put up 63 points in the spring game. Like, that's not easy. I'm excited to see what Jeff Lebby does there. I don't think they're going to be a team that competes in the SEC necessarily, but I do think they're going to be a tough out for some teams.
Yeah, the difference between them and Vanderbilt as the bottom dwellers is Vanderbilt just doesn't have the talent. Mississippi State's got dudes who've played at other schools, whether it be the Pac-12 or Big 12 or whatever. So, like, they got dudes. We'll see if they can, you know, perform when the bright lights come on Vegas. So we'll see. One more here I'll just throw in real quick. Florida, I think everybody's expecting them to suck. Everybody's expecting Billy Napier's going to lose. Like, Graham Mertz was one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the SEC last year. And to me, dude, DJ Lagway's got to play. He's a freak. Yeah. He looked good in the spring game. Like, it almost compared it, Marler, to the year when Chris Leak was, you know, the upperclassman and Tebow was the freshman. Yeah. They had packages for Tebow. Now, I don't think he's not the runner that Tebow was, but he can run. Like, I almost think build packages for Lagway because he's too talented to not see the field this year. So we'll see. But
I think that the way, like there needs to be some sort of find a middle ground between what the example you gave with Tebow's freshman year and then Bo Nix at Malzahn. Because I think what he's going to have to do is Malzahn, if you remember going into that season in 2019, he was in a contract year, he was on the hot seat, which he seems like he always was. But he hitched his wagon. That was the year they had Malik Willis. They had Joey Gatewood, I believe. And he hitched his wagon to a true freshman quarterback. I don't think in a position where you can do that with Billy Napier because Graham Mertz is one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the entire country, not even just the SEC. So you need to play them both. But what you also really need is to keep the excitement of the fans and keep off the hot seat a little bit and keep them excited about like, hey, like this is what the future is. Like this is what we have next year. Like, give me some time.
All right, one more segment with Chris Marler here. When we return, we will hit on teams that are maybe a little bit overrated in the SEC. That's coming your way next. But first, want to take a second here for our friends at Monopoly Go. Game off. We got to pause here to talk about Monopoly Go. And I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. We already talked about them, but there's so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with your friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers. You can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. Cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, and hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or the robot pachinko machine. There's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench. Go download it now on Google Play or the App Store. Now, I'm going to download it and get playing with Chris Marler here in just a second. It is Monopoly Go, and it is game on with Monopoly Go. All right, as we dive back into it with our buddy Chris Marler, and we've been talking some big picture SEC stuff here. And look, Marler, we talked about some teams that maybe coming out of spring, we maybe impressed us, maybe said, all right, they're supposed to stink, but they might be a little bit better. How about teams that are maybe a little bit overrated? And I'm going to start here with the Texas Longhorns. Everybody and their brother are picking them, them and Georgia's the two best teams overwhelmingly. And I'm going, okay, wait a minute. I watched Texas in the Sugar Bowl. I was down there in New Orleans. I saw it in person. Quinn Ewers stunk that night. I saw him in the rivalry game against Oklahoma. He stunk throwing a couple early interceptions in that game. He was great in the Alabama game, but I'm not ready to crown Quinn Ewers the next coming when you were talking about he's losing Xavier Worthy. He's losing A.D. Mitchell. He's losing all these pieces. Like, yes, they've brought in some good receivers to the transfer portal, but Sark just got 11 guys drafted after Texas has had a huge deficiency in draft-eligible players. Yeah. It's a lot of good talent they lose from that team. I'm not ready to just crown Texas as, oh, yeah, 11 or 12 wins. They're just going to come into the SEC and run roughshod.
Yeah, it's funny because I love Sark, and I think he's a great coach. I think he's been kind of unfairly criticized for a long time as his ability to lead. And he took on Washington after they were 0-12, right? And then brought them to relevance and all that kind of stuff. I feel like with Sark, he's always going to have a great offensive game plan. And he's got a lot of offensive weapons. Like you said, you bring in Isaiah Bond. You got to go the Amari Niblack and all that kind of stuff from Bama. I think all that's great. Dude, they lost A.D. Mitchell, who's one of the most clutch receivers in the entire country over the last 3 seasons. They lost Jatavian Sanders at tight end, who was arguably the second best tight end in the country at times going into last season behind Brock Bowers. Then they lost Xavier Worthy, who was, he was their best offensive weapon for 3 straight years. Right, like regardless of him weighing 160 pounds, he was the biggest offensive weapon they had. And they lost Jordan Whittington. You lost all that. And I tell you what, the thing that people keep forgetting about with Texas last year, about one of the reasons they were so strong, like the offense got all the accolades and the attention and all that kind of stuff. Look at the shiny stuff. Look at the shiny stuff. That defensive line, especially at the core of it and the inside part of it, was some of the best nose tackle play. Like all those guys inside were some of the best players their position in the entire country, right? That's gone. Like we sat here for years talking about how Texas is like they do the least with the most, and they have all these like great recruits. They don't ever put anybody in the draft, and now all of a sudden it's a year later, and Texas has the most players they've had drafted, and I don't even know how long. and we expect him to reload. I don't see that happening at all. Isaiah Bond's a great receiver. He's not either of those guys. He's not A.D. Mitchell, and he's definitely not Xavier Worthy. So he's got. I think coming into a year like this in the SEC, he's got a lot on his plate.
Well, and don't forget Jonathan Brooks. He only played in 10 games, but he ran for over 1,100 yards and 10 touchdowns. Like, he's gone. So,
Robinson.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to replace, and I'm just look. They may prove me wrong, but I'm not ready to just crown Texas has arrived. The schedule's getting tougher, Marler. This isn't Baylor and Kansas. Like, you're going to be playing Georgia and like the toughest teams in the SEC. So we will see. But I still think 10-2 very doable. But get out of here with the 12-0. Like, they're not going undefeated. They're going to lose a game or two along the way. Another team I'm putting in this mix, and I know people are high on them, and I love Eli Drinkwitz, but I feel like Mizzou is due for a step back. And I know Brady Cook's back, and I know Luther Burton's back, I know the receiving corps is back, but here's my angle. We are underestimating the loss of Cody Schrader. Cody Schrader was the leading rusher in the SEC last year.
Yeah,
and I know Drink he's done a good job of replacing running backs every time he loses them. But Cody Schrader was special, man. He took over games from Missouri last year. Third quarter against Ohio State, you're scoreless, and he finally starts like head down, moving the chains, finding daylight. I think the loss of Cody Schrader, and they've done a good job. They addressed the transfer portal. They went and got Marcus Carroll. Like, I think they'll be okay, but I think that loss of Schrader is what's going to hurt them. And I think Mizzou's kind of due for, and their schedule's very favorable, but I think like 10-2 at best. 9-3, 8-4, if things don't go well.
All right, let me ask you a question though, because this is I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying about Cody Schrader. Who was the running back? Did you know who Cody Schrader was going into last season?
He made a name for himself. Yeah, he became a household name in the SEC last year. Yeah.
Who led the SEC in rushing in 2021? Do you remember?
2021. I'll know when you say it.
Tyler Beatty from Mizzou.
Okay, yeah.
So I remember having this conversation one time with Chris Dorian, and I was talking about how I thought Florida was going to be this and that and blah blah, and they had to replace the Kyle Trask and whatnot. And he was like, okay, well, I maybe Kyle Trask wasn't the answer, but he goes, the bottom line is like you didn't know who that guy was last year, and then all of a sudden he was able to replace him. He's like, so. Of course you don't think they're going to be good. I'm not saying this about you. I'm just saying in general, like, of course we all think that like Mizzou's going to have their hands full trying to replace a guy like Cody Schrader, but we've actually seen Drink do just that and replace the SEC leading rusher with another one. And I think it's going to only help now that they have all the offensive firepower. And I will say this, I'm not taking anything away from Cody Schrader. One of the big reasons why that he was such a huge, important piece is because Luther Burton was hurt. I mean, Luther Burton was the focal point of that offense for a majority of the first half of the season. And then, his production gets cut in half. So I do think that it's concerning you lose all that. And they also had 6 guys drafted total. But I think that Drink will find a way. The schedule is also pretty favorable for them.
Yeah. Just one quick disclaimer. So you said that was 2021, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I was just making sure. 2022, it was Rocket Sanders, but Schrader and Nathaniel Pete were kind of the dual-headed running back in 2022. Right. And they were productive. Schrader had 700 rushing yards. Pete had 400. But and go back years before that. I mean, he's always had a guy, and so that's been Drink's calling card since he's been. I remember, was it Larry Roundtree? He had him. So he's always had a guy. But again, I look at last year was the exception to the rule with Missouri, right? Like that was Drink exceeding expectations. Can he do it again? You know what I mean? And that's where I kind of like, are they due to come back? How about your mind? Is there any team in the SEC you think is maybe overrating a little bit?
I
just want to make you say Alabama. I just want to make you say Alabama.
The one that comes to mind is the one that concerns me the most is the logo on my head. So I don't. But I mean, it's only because the depth is what the concern is. Or I have every bit of belief that DeBoer is going to be really good as an X and O's guy, and we've seen him be very good right off the bat at a lot of places he's been. I think Jalen Milroe, I will go to bat for him for forever. I think he's just such a good kid, and I think he's such an underrated quarterback. What's funny, man, I tell you what's funny is people have hated on that kid for so long. He's a one-read guy. He's blah, blah, blah. And all he did week in and week out was put his head down, be a great teammate, and then lead that team to an undefeated SEC regular season last year, right? That's a team that was, they had a 7-point lead with 3 minutes left against Michigan. And then who knows what happens if they go to the national championship game. But Jalen Milroe being projected as a first-round draft pick next year. Like, I think that they've got a guy at QB, and they will have some people at receiver. They're going to put up a lot of they're going to give people a lot of fits. The thing that would concern me the most, man, the front seven is going to be good. The back 4 to 5, or whoever you're going to play, that's going to be a concern. How big can Ryan Williams be right off the bat? Because they need somebody that's going to step in at receiver and be a guy. I love Kendrick Law. I love I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but 6, Kobe Prentice.
Yeah,
but how big can Ryan Williams be right off the bat as a true freshman?
Yeah, Jeremy Bernard too. He looked pretty good throughout the spring. So, but I was going to say, Marler, you're focusing on the wrong side of the ball. Nick Saban's gone. Like, what if this secondary? It's crazy to say. We're used to seeing Bama's always good in the secondary, but what if they're not? Like, I think that'll be a culture shock for a lot of Bama fans to go, wait, why are we getting torched? We're giving up big plays in the defensive side. And look, you lose Dallas Turner, you lose Chris Braswell, you lose a lot of pieces. I like Deontay Lawson and Jahad Campbell, but again, that secondary, there's some big question marks. And the loss of Caleb Downs is significant. As much as Bama fans want to dismiss it, it's a huge loss. So, it's going to be weird if Bama Marler next year is winning games 40-34. We're going to be going, what in the world is going on here? But it's a very real possibility. All right, he is Chris Marler. Let everybody know where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, Fourth and Wrong podcast. We have our weekly show every Monday night live at 8:30. And then we have a daily show Tuesday through Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, and then a Friday brunch at 11 a.m. as well. So we got some good guests on this week. We're going to have Gordy on next week. But yeah, like I said, so Fourth and Wrong podcast on all streaming platforms, then YouTube and Twitter and all that good stuff. And for me and my social media, it's Vern Funquist CFB. You can find me arguing with Deion Sanders today.
Well, there we go. Until he gets that Twitter account shut down and has to find a new one. He is Chris Marler. Appreciate him as always, and we will talk again soon as we wrap up here on Locked On SEC. I want to thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. We'll be back on Monday. Come on back and check us out. And hey, for your second listen, check out Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and it's available on the Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with our local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys on Monday.